Hello and welcome. My name is Mindy Marks, Yale College Class of 2000, and I am the Senior Director for Regional Clubs at the Yale Alumni Association. I want to thank you all for watching this session of our Impact Series, The Journey Towards Equality, with Commissioner Carmelyn Malalis and Dr. Karen DuBois-Walton. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. Carmelyn Malalis was appointed Chair and Commissioner of the New York City Commission on Human Rights in November 2014, following more than a decade in private practice as an advocate for employees' rights in the workplace. Prior to her appointment, Commissioner Malalis was a partner at Alton & Golden LLP, where she co-founded and co-chaired its lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender workplace rights practice group, and co-chaired its Disability and Family Responsibilities Discrimination Practice Group, and successfully represented employees in negotiations, agency proceedings, and litigation involving claims of sexual harassment, retaliation, and discrimination. Throughout her career, Commissioner Malalis has demonstrated a fierce commitment to promoting diversity and inclusion and preventing and prosecuting discrimination and intolerance. Since she assumed her role as Chair and Commissioner in February 2015, Commissioner Malalis has revitalized the agency, making it a recognized venue for justice for all New Yorkers through increased enforcement, novel restorative justice approaches to case and conflict resolution, and robust public education and outreach to prevent discrimination in New York City. She has served on the New York City Bar Association's Executive Committee and Committee on LGBT Rights, Human Rights Watch's Advisory Committee to its LGBT Rights Program, the American Bar Association Section on Labor and Employment Law Committee on Diversity in the Legal Profession, and the Board of Queers for Economic Justice. Commissioner Malalis lives with her wife in Brooklyn with their 2 children. Karen DuBois-Walton currently serves as the Executive Director of the Elm City Communities Housing Authority of the City of New Haven, President of the Glendower Group LLC, and President of 360 Management Group Company, responsible for administrative, programmatic, and policy direction of the Public Housing Choice Voucher Program, Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program, Finance, and Planning and Development activities. Prior to assuming this role, Dr. DuBois-Walton served as the Chief Operating Officer for the Housing Authority of New Haven. Previously, she served as Chief of Staff and Chief Administrative Officer for Mayor John DeStefano Jr. in the city of New Haven, Connecticut. A trained clinical psychologist, prior to assuming positions with the Housing Authority and the city of New Haven, she served in positions with the state of Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services and the Yale University Child Study Center. The recipient of numerous awards, including the Network Journal's 25 Most Influential Black Women in Business and the Greater New Haven NAACP's Community Service Award, Dr. DuBois-Walton serves on numerous boards and commissions and is an active member of the New Haven community, where she resides with her husband and 2 sons. Karen, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Welcome, Carmelyn. It's so wonderful to be in communication with you today in conversation. How are you?
Same here, Karen. Thanks so much for doing this with me today.
Absolutely. Look, we can't begin a Yale alumni panel without my asking you a little bit about your Yale story. What brought you to the university?
You know, I wish I had I can't claim to have a very deep reason for going to Yale. I will tell you that at around the same time that I was applying to colleges, so I was Yale class of 96, and around the same time I was applying for college, there had been an article out in the New York Times, and the headline was something along the lines of one in 4 or maybe more, indicating or suggesting that 1 in 4, maybe more Yaleys were LGBTQ identified. And self-identifying as a lesbian, I thought to myself, oh my goodness, Finally, I'm going to be amongst, my people, so to speak.
Right.
And so Yale very easily became my first choice.
And did it live up to its to the article? Did you find it to be a welcoming place?
I will say it was not 1 in 4, maybe more, at least not in my experience there, but it was for me a very welcoming place. And still so many of my lifelong friends come from my experience at Yale. So it did not disappoint, for sure.
Wonderful. It was really amazing to hear Mindy read through your bio and your history of accomplishments already. And it got me wondering, I want to hear a little bit more about how your human rights and equity work began. How'd you get into this?
Sure. I have to say part of it came from my Yale College experience, just working with different organizations on campus. I think just by virtue of, one of my drivers for coming to Yale, I ended up doing a lot on campus with different LGBTQ type organizations. I also ended up doing a lot of work in the area that I think would now broadly be thought of as gender justice related. And then, like many schools, a lot of the students of color were extremely close. And I think, that's traditionally how it has often happened in especially kind of Ivy schools and the type and the like. And it was, it was the same at Yale when I was there, which is that a lot of the students of color, whether they were API, part of the Black student groups, part of the Caribbean student groups, what have you, tended to mix quite a bit. And in a lot of our personal interactions, of course, came stories of, of things that we needed to overcome to be heard or to be visible or to be seen for who we are and the totality of who we are. And so I think that really planted a lot of my desire to move into a direction of human rights and civil rights and move in the direction of law. As many other API students and I used to talk about, a lot of us were kind of, driven by our parents to pursue things more in the sciences or more in medicine. Count me among the students that trekked up Science Hill and took, my pre-med courses, but just by virtue of a lot of the relationships that I created at Yale and by virtue of some of the fantastic professors that I had, it helped make sense, I think, of a lot of our personal experiences. I went more in the direction of doing human rights and civil rights through law.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that pivot. I too started out trekking up Science Hill and made a pivot. And then in terms of sort of career path, also pivoted into government service myself and found that to be an adjustment as somebody who has an sort of advocacy and activist background. So I'm interested in, now that you sit very squarely in government, what that pivot has been like for you. And do you think of yourself as a disruptor in that setting?
I do. It's the case, well, after law school, I clerked for a year for a federal judge in the Southern District of New York here in Manhattan. But besides that, this is really my first time working in government. And when I thought about government service or public service, I thought to myself, one, it's something that at some point in my life I need to do. I need to be able to give back that way, because I do think of it as service. And I do think that we are all accountable for the communities that we want to live in and the places we want to see and the change we want to see happening. I have felt that sense of accountability. But I also wanted to make sure I was going somewhere, I was doing the type of public service that I knew I could bring, again, not just my professional experience and qualifications to that, but I could bring my whole person, that I knew that my life experience, the relationships that I've had through my life experience, that I could bring those experiences to where I was to kind of change what is oftentimes considered to be a more, I think, staid government experience. And that has certainly been the experience I've had in the last 6 years. When I first came to the Commission on Human Rights, we had a staff of about 55. Over the course of my time there, it's grown to an agency of 160 people. And I would say the great majority of my staff are people for whom this is their first time in government, similar to me.
Yeah.
And they came here with the sense of, we want to be representative of the communities that government is supposed to serve. We want to make the change that we know our communities need. We want to disrupt the status quo to bring something new and refreshing to government.
So I really want to dig into the work that you're doing and situated in this time we're in right now. So I think of the fact that as a nation, as a world, we're dealing with a health pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. We, as a country, post the tragic killing of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, have all been awakened to the racial inequities. And I wonder how that is playing out in the work that you do, as there's been a noted rise in anti-Asian bias.
Yeah.
There is the continued history of anti-Black bias. I'd love to hear how that's playing out in the work you're doing each and every day.
Sure. It's interesting. I looked back on the last 6 years of my time here. It happens to coincide with the Trump administration's kind of curtailing of many human rights or civil rights, things that we thought of as being well established up until that administration took office. So I always think about how what an interesting time it was for me to be doing the work of human rights on a local government level. When I think across the country during this period of time, it's been about holding the line, and in some cases making sure that the contracting of human rights or civil rights that we were seeing on the federal level would not affect the communities we were responsible for on the everyday level. And I will tell you that my approach in the last 6 years in that environment, and in the current environment we're in, that's followed, is really that I never want to think that I was in a place of being able to make change, of being able to make important decisions regarding human rights, whether that was, in policy initiatives or interpretation of the law, and our focus or prioritization of different communities. I never want to look back at that time and think, why didn't we do more in this area? So much of the guiding ethos of our office during the time that I've been there has been to look at issues that we know have relevance locally, but also can have national significance. Given the fact that we are in New York City, that we do generally have great law, we have what is generally considered to be one of the most robust human rights laws in the country, if not in the world. And given the fact that we have, for the most part around us, a lot of progressive elected officials who want to see human rights protections be prioritized. And so this is a period of time where, in my first year, when we saw that there were over 22 anti-trans bills being introduced around the country, we prioritized transgender rights and bringing visibility to people who were non-binary through both law enforcement guidance, executive orders that we worked out with the administration and otherwise. In the era of Me Too, Me Too became viral in, I think, October of 2017, I think. And two months after that, we put together a public citywide hearing on sexual harassment. Again, saying we have to respond to what we're seeing, what is both relevant and national. And then I think in the last few years, there has been a much needed, long overdue reckoning on the types of indignities that our Black communities have continued to suffer for decades and decades and decades long. And so focusing a lot of the work we've been doing on anti-Black racism, on the everyday indignities when people are policed, for instance, because of their natural hair or what are traditionally considered Black hairstyles, because they are walking while Black, living while Black, shopping while Black, things of that everyday nature. And then most recently, really trying to focus on bringing visibility to the fact that anti-Asian racism is real. And that because there have been, mythologies spread about what Asian American or API communities are like, it's really done a disservice to the diversity of those communities. And we do see, of course, increased complaints of discrimination and harassment, especially in this COVID environment. So it's really been about reacting to both local and national issues as fiercely as we can.
And so you sit in a position of policy and enforcement around these areas. I invite you to offer to this audience of Yale alums, what are roles that each alum can take in terms of equity work and beginning to shift the lens in terms of what we center and what we're paying attention to and what we're privileging in community. What can Yale alums be engaged around?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm going to say that I'm now a convert to public service. Karen, I know you and I have talked a little bit about what brought us into government generally, but so much change can happen in government. So one thing I would certainly suggest is for people who have always wondered, should I take the leap? Should I look into elected office? Should I look into working for a specific office? Yes, yes, and yes. So much work can be done. Change can really happen. If there's something that I emphatically believe from this experience is that real change can happen in government. It takes vision, it takes will, and it takes courage oftentimes, but it is incredibly possible. It's wonderful, I think, to see a lot of people who I think, if we were several years back, would not have even considered civic engagement in that way. And now, look at the diversity just even in New York City, the diversity of candidates that we see, diversity by age, by religion, by gender and gender identity. It's fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. And then the other thing I think is just for people to be more engaged in issues. I think we're living in a time when there's a lot of negativity, and there is a lot, frankly, that compels us right now to just, somebody said to me that some of the most driven people they've known in this period, they're saying, I just want to collapse on the floor, because it's been one after another. We're living in a time of incredible uncertainty, where the uncertainty has continued, and things that we had not imagined affecting our country or our communities we have seen happen. And I think for Yale alums, you have to realize you are whoever you are. The fact that you are a Yale alum gives you an additional element of privilege. And what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is unimaginable times, as you have mentioned, and the amount of things that I can imagine you're juggling in order to do the work that you're doing in such shifting times. I wouldn't be true to my roots as a psychologist if I didn't ask you a little bit about, so how do you do that and maintain wellness and wholeness in yourself? How do you take care of yourself through this, and how do you support that among the team that you lead, such that they're able to be whole, well functioning people doing this critical work in the New York community?
Well, Karen, I'll first say that after this, I can take some advice from you. Sadly, I think we could all take some advice on how to be more centered people, right? And just kind of keeping it together in the face of life generally. But then when you add to it everything that we've been seeing and experiencing this past year, there's a greater need for that. But for me and for my staff, what I've really tried to endorse is a sense of connectivity. I think especially in the current pandemic, COVID world, what so much of us are craving, what we are missing is that sense of connectivity, right? There are ways in which many people, and I'm, throughout the hardship of this period, I will be the first to say, I've been me and my family, we have been incredibly privileged. We have been incredibly privileged. We've been incredibly fortunate. We have not dealt with many of the challenges, many of the hardships or loss that are easily around me, outside my door in the communities that my agency serves. So let me first start off by saying that. But in my own personal experience of all of this, I think it's been very important for me to continue, whatever mode of contact. Sometimes that's virtually, even though we're all zoomed out. Sometimes it's taking a walk around the block or in the park with a friend and keeping connected that way. There is so much that I continue to learn from the people around me, whether they're kind of, lifelong friends who I just get to get on FaceTime or on a Zoom meeting with, or they're neighbors that frankly I had not had more than hello and goodbye type conversations until the pandemic, which forced us then to kind of connect and talk to each other, because that was what was in our immediate environment. So I think connectivity is incredibly important. And so for our staff, we have several different methods of doing that. We have weekly meetings that are styled to be centeredness times together. And they're led by folks on our staff who are social workers, who put out different topics or ideas, also just depending on what's going on in the world. You mentioned George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery earlier, Breonna Taylor. All of this affects people, whether or not they're in the field of human rights, but all of this has an incredible impact on people. And all of this was happening while we were in this, COVID environment. And so making sure that people have the space to express their frustration and their sadness and their anger, I think is incredibly important. Giving people the space to say nothing, to process what they're experiencing. So I think that, giving people the time and the space that they need, it sounds oxymoronic in this time of pandemic because people think to themselves, I've been home, I've been working remotely. How much space, how much time can I possibly have? I'm sure you of all people, Karen, will be able to, that's not real processing space. So being intentional, I think, about it is very important.
I could not have offered a better response. I'm going to have to start calling you Dr. Carmelyn as well. Oh, very well said.
My mother will be so happy.
She will. See, absolutely, absolutely. No, I mean the concepts you've brought into your workplace sound like just what's needed in a moment like this. And so much of it, as I've talked with people about, so much of the loss and the pain in this moment, and the need to balance that by also thinking about what's been revealed to us in this moment that we hope will carry forward. So I'll maybe pitch that to you as one of our final questions is what are some of the lessons of the multiple pandemics we're living in right now that you do hope will carry forward as we begin to get vaccination out to enough people and start to come out of our virtual work and very isolated existence? What do you hope will carry forward as a lesson learned out of this?
Perhaps I hope this is not just because I'm living in a bubble or I'm working in the bubble of thinking about human rights and thinking about, equity work. But I will say there has been, for some people who have not been in this area or who have not really consciously thought about it, has been startling for some people to comprehend the level of inequity of especially, Black and Brown communities, Black and Latinx or Hispanic communities in the area of healthcare, in the area of services, and I think when we have been contending with the pandemic, there have been challenges that people could not have imagined before in the United States generally, right? Like, did people think that we would run out of hospital beds? Did people think that we would be having to speed contract to get ventilators into certain areas? I mean, I'm also saying this as somebody who has lived in New York City at the time when New York City was the epicenter, right, of the pandemic here. And that all of these, kind of unbelievable things for people, I think revealed in a very startling way, especially for non-Black people, non-Black communities, non-Black professionals, the level of inequity, a level of inequity that has been felt very personally by certain communities, that has had to be managed many times internally to those communities. And I think part of this has been a reckoning of why that's just not tenable. Whether you are approaching this from an equity perspective because you believe in human rights and civil rights, or you're approaching it just from a sustainability perspective of our communities, it is not sustainable. And I think we have seen that level of inequity trickle through many different issues, whether you're looking at, social distancing enforcement, or food insecurity issues, or access to medical care, now access to vaccinations, right? So my hope is that as we're contending with these issues, the structures, the task forces, the things that have come about to problem solve for these issues, that those structures stay, and that they deal with the everyday inequities experienced by these communities, even when we're not in a time of crisis, even when it's not pandemic, because now we have learned our lesson.
Absolutely, so well said, right? It's a great quote about not wanting to return to normal because normal wasn't working for so many, right? So let's lean into something that is more inclusive and more equitable, and not what was normal in the past.
Absolutely.
I so appreciate this time with you, Carmelyn. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you, Karen. This has been a lot of fun. I only wish that we were, again, out of the COVID environment and actually sitting on, armchairs or sofas to be able to have this conversation. It's been great getting to know you a little bit through this as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. For more Impact Series content, please visit the Yale Alumni Association website and channels. Thank you.
Take care.